The massive doors to the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador James Miller straightened his tie and took a deep breath. Behind him stood 5 members of his diplomatic team, each carrying tablets filled with Earth's history, culture, and technological achievements. "Remember," Miller whispered, "no matter what happens, we represent all of humanity today." The chamber was circular and vast, with tiered seating that rose like a coliseum. Representatives of over 200 alien species watched the humans enter. Some leaned forward with curiosity, others whispered to their neighbors, and a few showed obvious disdain. At the center of the chamber stood a raised platform where 5 beings sat behind a curved table. These were the elder species, the founding members of the Galactic Council who had guided interstellar politics for millennia. "The representatives of planet Earth may approach," announced a melodic voice from hidden speakers. Miller walked forward, his footsteps echoing. The lighting in the chamber shifted to accommodate human vision, a small courtesy that Miller appreciated. "Honorable elders," Miller began, "on behalf of the United Earth Government, I thank you for this historic opportunity. Humanity is eager to join the galactic community and share in peaceful cooperation." The central elder, a tall being with iridescent skin that shifted colors with each movement, spoke first. "Ambassador Miller, we welcome Earth's petition for membership. Please proceed with your presentation of human civilization." For the next hour, Miller and his team displayed Earth's artistic achievements, scientific discoveries, and social structures. The council members seemed moderately impressed by human music and mathematics, though several made notes about the concerning frequency of conflicts in human history. And finally, Miller said, "As required by council protocol, we present an overview of Earth's defensive capabilities." The military attaché stepped forward and activated a holographic display showing Earth's defense systems, from orbital platforms to ground forces. When the display showed soldiers carrying rifles, a ripple of laughter spread through the chamber. "Excuse me," interrupted one of the elders, a being with 4 arms and metallic scales. "Are we to understand that your species still relies on projectile weapons? Actual physical objects propelled through space?" Miller nodded. "Yes, Elder Vox. While we have developed laser systems, our military finds traditional kinetic weapons highly effective for many situations." The laughter grew louder. A representative from the front row, a member of the militaristic Verith species, stood up. "Esteemed elders, are we seriously considering full membership for a species that hasn't even mastered basic energy weapon technology? They're launching metal pellets. It's like inviting cave dwellers to a technological summit." Miller kept his expression neutral despite the burning in his chest. The diplomatic briefings had warned this might happen, but experiencing it firsthand was different. "The Verith representative's concern is noted," said the central elder, though amusement colored their voice. "Ambassador Miller, surely you understand our reaction. The council races moved beyond physical projectiles thousands of years ago. Even the youngest spacefaring species develop energy weapons before achieving interstellar travel. Our weapons may seem simple," Miller replied carefully, "but they are effective for our needs. Human innovation often takes unexpected paths." "Indeed, most unexpected," said Elder Vox with poorly concealed mockery. "Perhaps in a few centuries, your species will discover the wonders of energy manipulation." The central elder raised a hand for silence. "We have reviewed Earth's petition. The Council grants humanity probationary membership, with standard restrictions on colonial expansion and technology transfer. A cultural exchange program will be established to help humanity catch up." Miller bowed slightly. "Earth accepts these terms and looks forward to proving our worth to the Council." As the human delegation was escorted out, Miller heard continued laughter and jokes about the species that throws rocks. He maintained his diplomatic smile, but his mind was already working on how to navigate this new relationship where humanity clearly started at a disadvantage. What none of the council members realized was that human history was filled with underestimated underdogs who eventually changed everything. Commander Alex Reed adjusted the collar of his dress uniform as he walked through the gleaming corridors of the Galactic Council Embassy Tower. 3 months into his assignment as military attaché, he still felt out of place among the aliens who glided past him, some with multiple limbs, others floating on anti-gravity discs. "Good morning, Commander," chirped a small blue-skinned aide. "Ambassador Miller requests your presence at the diplomatic briefing." Reed nodded and changed direction. He had expected his role here to involve presenting Earth's military capabilities. Instead, he found himself playing political chess with beings who had mastered interstellar travel when humans were still figuring out bronze. The meeting room was already filled when Reed arrived. Ambassador Miller sat at one end of the oval table, with representatives from 4 alien species in attendance. "Ah, Commander Reed," Miller said. "We were just discussing the Verith proposal to limit human colony expansion in the Orion sector." Reed took his seat, noticing the smug expression on the face of the Verith representative. The Verith were a warrior species with scaled skin and sharp features. They had been the most vocal in mocking human weapon systems. "The Council's concerns are valid," the Verith representative, Tarn, said smoothly. "Humans lack the technological sophistication to safely manage multiple colony worlds. The restriction is for your own protection." Reed bit back his immediate response. He had reviewed the star charts. The Orion sector bordered Verith territory and contained several resource-rich planets. "Interesting that your concern emerged just after our survey ships discovered platinum deposits on Orion 4, Reed remarked. Tarn's scales darkened in what Reed had learned was a sign of anger. "The primitive nature of your extraction methods would damage the planetary ecosystem. We could discuss more efficient methods," suggested the Nilari representative, Lissa. Unlike the aggressive Verith, the Nilari were a pragmatic species with translucent skin that revealed the outline of their 3 hearts. Perhaps a technology exchange would benefit both parties. The Verith hissed softly. "The Council rules are clear. Probationary members receive limited technology transfers." Reed caught Lissa's eye and saw an almost imperceptible nod. The Nilari had approached humans privately several times, suggesting they saw potential in Earth despite the Council's general dismissal. After the meeting, Lissa approached Reed in the corridor. "Commander, would you join me for a meal? I find your species' perspective refreshing." At the embassy's dining area, they sat in a quiet corner. Reed noticed how other Council species kept their distance from the human section. "Your people face significant challenges here," Lissa said, consuming a glowing liquid. "The Verith particularly wish to keep humans contained." "We've noticed," Reed replied dryly. "Any particular reason beyond the usual disdain for our primitive technology?" "The Verith dominate Council security matters because of their advanced energy weapons. Your projectile weapons may seem simple, but they represent an unknown factor. The Verith dislike unknowns." Reed considered this. "So it's not just cultural snobbery. It's about maintaining their position. Politics exists even among the stars." "Commander." Lissa's skin rippled in what Reed had learned was amusement. "Not all Council members share the Verith view. My people believe diversity of approach strengthens the whole. That's why you've been friendly to us." "Precisely. The Council has grown complacent. New perspectives could prove valuable." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent beeping from Lissa's communication device. Her translucent skin paled as she read the message. "What is it?" Reed asked. "A distant outpost has gone silent," Lissa said, her voice tight. "The 3rd this month." "Pirates," Reed suggested. Lissa's 3 hearts visibly pulsed faster. "The Council officially states yes, but the pattern suggests something more organized, something that can defeat our defense systems with disturbing ease." Reed leaned forward. "If there's a threat the Council is facing, Earth would be willing to help." "The Verith would never accept human assistance," Lissa said, rising. "But perhaps they may not have a choice much longer." As she departed, Reed sat back, processing this new information. If a threat existed that challenged even the Council's vaunted technology, it might create an opportunity for humans to prove their worth and their weapons. After all, the emergency council session buzzed with tension. Commander Reed stood at the back of the chamber, watching the proceedings with growing interest. On the main display, grainy footage showed the destruction of a council outpost. The attack had been swift and devastating. "This is the 7th attack in 2 months," announced Elder Vox, his metallic scales dull with concern. "The Voidborn are no longer just a border threat." Reed leaned toward Ambassador Miller. "Voidborn, a mysterious species from the Galactic Rim," Miller whispered. "The Council has had minor skirmishes with them before, but nothing like this." On the screen, dark ships with irregular, almost organic shapes fired purple beams at the outpost's defenses. What caught Reed's attention was how the outpost's energy shields flickered and died after only a few hits. The Verith representative, Tarn, stood with a military rigidity. "The Defense Committee requests additional resources. We must increase production of our highest-grade energy cannons." "Which have proven ineffective," countered Lissa of the Nilari, her translucent skin pulsing with agitation. "The Voidborn shields absorb our energy weapons with minimal damage." Tarn's scales darkened. "The solution is more power, not abandoning proven technology." Reed studied the footage again, noticing how the Voidborn ships moved, not with the precision of machines, but with something almost fluid, like predators. After the session, Reed met with his small team of human military observers. Lieutenant Parker, a tactical specialist, displayed her analysis on a tablet. "The Council ships are following textbook patterns," she explained. "Coordinated energy bursts, standard formations. But look at the Voidborn response." The footage showed the alien ships seemingly absorbing energy blasts, their hulls glowing briefly before returning to normal. "It's like they're feeding on it," Reed muttered. "Exactly, sir. Their shields are designed to dissipate energy. The Council keeps hitting them with the same thing, expecting different results." Reed tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the table. "Have you shared this analysis?" Parker snorted. "Try to." The Verith military liaison said he wasn't interested in primitive tactical assessments. "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Davis, "there's something else. A human research vessel was near the Nilari science outpost during the last attack. They managed to escape and recorded this." The new footage showed a Voidborn ship up close. Its hull wasn't metal, but something that shifted and moved, almost like living tissue. When hit by energy weapons, the surface rippled and absorbed the blast. "Have we tried our weapons against this material?" Reed asked. "The Council wouldn't allow it," Davis replied. "Says projectile weapons are too imprecise for space combat." Reed was about to respond when his communication device chimed with an encrypted message from Lissa. "Meeting. Docking Bay 7. Urgent." The Nilari ship had seen better days. Scorch marks marred its sleek hull, and emergency repairs were visible along its side. Lissa met Reed at the entrance, her usually composed demeanor shaken. "We rescued your research vessel during the attack," she said without preamble. "One of your scientists has a theory about the Voidborn that the Council needs to hear." Inside, a small team of humans worked alongside Nilari crew. A man with disheveled hair and bloodshot eyes approached them. "Commander Reed, Dr. Thomas Wells, Xenobiology. You need to see this." Wells led them to a laboratory where a small piece of dark, almost oily material floated in a containment field. "Voidborn hull fragment," Wells explained. "We managed to collect it after the attack. The Nilari helped us run tests." "And?" Reed prompted. "Their ships aren't ships at all. They're organisms. Living beings with technology integrated into their biological systems. Their outer membrane absorbs energy and converts it. That's why the Council's weapons are useless. They're basically feeding the Voidborn." Lissa's 3 hearts visibly pulsed through her skin. "We tried everything in our arsenal. Nothing penetrated." Wells grinned tiredly. Almost nothing. He nodded to a section of the sample where a small, clean hole was visible. One of our security officers fired his sidearm when a piece of the hull material appeared to move toward him. The bullet went straight through. Reed stared at the hole, understanding dawning. Physical projectiles don't provide energy to absorb. Precisely, Wells said. The Voidborn have evolved defenses against energy weapons because that's all they've encountered for thousands of years. But not against something as primitive as a bullet. Reed finished, a slow smile spreading across his face. Lissa looked between them. The Council would never accept this without proof. Then let's give them proof, Reed said. Dr. Wells, how would you like to conduct an official demonstration? The Council testing facility hummed with activity as dignitaries from various species filed into the observation deck. Commander Reed stood beside Dr. Wells, both men tense but determined. After 3 days of arguing, pleading, and diplomatic maneuvering, they had finally secured this demonstration. Remember, Ambassador Miller whispered to them, whatever happens today will affect humanity's standing for generations. On the testing floor below, technicians prepared 2 identical chambers. Each contained a small sample of voidborn material recovered from recent attacks. The glossy black substance pulsed slightly, as if still alive even separated from its host. Elder Vox entered the observation deck, followed by military representatives from 7 Council species. The Verith delegation, led by Tarn, took positions at the front, their scaled faces set in expressions of skeptical disdain. Let us proceed with this demonstration, Elder Vox announced, emphasizing the word as if it were distasteful. Though I remain unconvinced that primitive kinetics could succeed where advanced energy technologies have failed. Lissa of the Nilari stepped forward. As the neutral observer, I will oversee the testing protocols. First, we will demonstrate standard Council weaponry against the Voidborn sample. A robotic arm positioned itself before the first chamber. It held a sleek energy pistol, the kind carried by Council security forces. A technician activated the weapon remotely. The pistol fired a bright blue beam at the Voidborn material. On the display screens above, everyone watched as the beam hit the sample. The black substance rippled, glowed briefly, and then settled back to its original state, completely undamaged. As expected, Tarn commented smugly, "Now let's see this human solution so we can move on to serious proposals." Reed stepped forward. The weapon we're testing is a standard-issue M7 sidearm. It fires a solid projectile using chemical propellant, what we call a bullet. Several Council members murmured at this description, some chuckling openly. One whispered loudly enough to be heard, "They might as well throw rocks." Dr. Wells positioned the human pistol in the second testing chamber. The weapon looked bulky and primitive compared to the sleek Council technology. When the technician signaled readiness, Wells nodded. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The gun's report was loud in the enclosed space, causing several Council members to flinch. The bullet streaked across the chamber and struck the Voidborn sample. Unlike the energy beam, the bullet tore straight through the material, leaving a clean hole. The edges of the hole did not heal or regenerate. The sample simply remained pierced, oozing a dark fluid. The observation deck fell silent. "Play that again," ordered Elder Vox, his metallic scales reflecting his sudden tension. The screens replayed the test in slow motion. The bullet penetrating the previously impervious material was unmistakable. Dr. Wells cleared his throat in the silence. As you can see, physical projectiles bypass the Voidborn's energy absorption capabilities. They have no defense against kinetic weapons. Tarn stepped forward, his composure cracking. This is merely a small sample. A complete Voidborn vessel would have structural integrity that. We recovered additional samples, Lissa interrupted, her normally gentle voice firm. Our scientists tested them against various materials. She displayed new data on the screens. The results consistently show vulnerability to physical penetration. Elder Vox studied the data, then turned to the human delegation. Explain the physics of this phenomenon. Dr. Wells projected a diagram. The Voidborn have evolved biological shields that capture and disperse energy attacks, but they've never encountered a species that still uses physical projectiles in space. It's like developing immunity to poison, but remaining vulnerable to a knife. Reed watched the council members processing this information. Some looked thoughtful, others disturbed, but none were laughing now. We propose, Reed said carefully, a joint operation. A small human strike team equipped with our weapons, deployed alongside your next defensive fleet. Tarn began to object, but Elder Vox raised a hand for silence. The council must discuss this proposal, the elder said, looking at the humans with new consideration. It seems we may have underestimated the potential applications of your technology. As the council members filed out, still murmuring among themselves, Reed caught Miller's eye. The ambassador gave a slight nod of approval. Well, Dr. Wells whispered, at least they're not laughing anymore. Alarms blared throughout the council battleship Eternal Light as it rocked from another Voidborn assault. Commander Reed gripped the handrail, watching the tactical display with growing concern. 3 council ships had already fallen to the Voidborn fleet attacking the mining colony of Talos Prime. Energy shields failing on sectors 4 through 7, reported a Nilari officer. The Voidborn vessels are concentrating fire on our weapon systems. Captain Moran, the Verith commander of the Eternal Light hissed in frustration. Divert power to forward cannons. We must break through their formation. Reed exchanged glances with his team of 12 human soldiers. After weeks of debate, the council had reluctantly permitted this small strike force to join the defense fleet. Now they waited in the launch bay with their modified weapons, watching as the council's mighty ships struggled against the Voidborn. Sir, Lieutenant Parker said quietly, if we don't launch soon, there won't be a colony left to defend. Reed nodded and opened a channel to the bridge. Captain Moran, request permission to deploy human strike team. The Verith's face appeared on the screen, scales darkened with stress. Your tiny team in those primitive shuttles. You'll be destroyed before reaching weapon range. Our shuttles are small enough to slip through the gaps in their formation, Reed countered. And unlike your energy weapons, our primitive technology might actually hurt them. Another explosion rocked the ship. Moran bared his teeth in what might have been a grimace or a snarl. Fine. Deploy your team. We'll provide covering fire, what little good it will do. Reed turned to his team. Final equipment check. Remember, we only get one shot at this. The human soldiers verify their weapons. Railguns modify for space combat. Specialized ammunition designed by Dr. Wells to maximize damage to Voidborn biology. And backup weapons including simple combat knives that now seemed oddly valuable. Launch sequence initiated, announced the Bay controller. May your primitive gods protect you, humans. The 3 small human shuttles shot from the Eternal Light as the massive council ships fired a barrage of energy weapons. The distraction worked. The human crafts slipped between the Voidborn vessels, appearing too insignificant to target compared to the capital ships. Reed's shuttle shuddered as it approached the largest Voidborn ship. Target the central mass, he ordered. Dr. Wells believes that's their equivalent of a command center. The shuttle pilot maneuvered close to the Voidborn vessel's pulsating surface. Up close, the alien ship looked even more organic, less like a vessel and more like a massive space-dwelling creature with technology embedded within its flesh. Deploying in 5 seconds, the pilot announced. Good hunting, sir. Reed and his 4-person team magnetized their boots and activated their space armor. When the shuttle's side door opened, they pushed off toward the Voidborn hull, using maneuvering jets to control their approach. Contact in 3, 2, 1. Reed counted down. They landed on the hull, which felt disturbingly soft under their boots. Following their training, the team secured themselves with anchors, then positioned their railguns. Fire on my mark, Reed ordered through the comm. 3, 2, 1. Mark. 5 railguns fired simultaneously, the specially designed projectiles tearing through the void-born hull with devastating effect. Unlike the Council's energy weapons, which the creature could absorb, these solid rounds ripped through its biological armor. The hull beneath them convulsed. Dark fluid leaked into space, freezing instantly in the vacuum. "It's working," Parker exclaimed, moving to secondary target points. The team repositioned and fired again, creating more breaches. Through their comm system, Reed heard similar reports from the other 2 strike teams. "The Voidborn vessels are breaking formation," came the surprised voice of Captain Moran from the Eternal Light *. 2 are retreating already. Reed's team fired a 3rd volley. This time, the reaction was immediate. The entire Voidborn ship shuddered violently. Light pulsed beneath its skin in patterns that suggested pain or distress. "All teams, return to shuttles immediately," Reed ordered. "I think we've angered it." As they jetted back to their shuttle, the Voidborn ship began to convulse more violently. By the time Reed's team was aboard and pulling away, the massive creature was already turning, abandoning its attack on the colony to retreat. From the shuttle viewport, Reed watched as the remaining Voidborn vessels followed suit, their coordinated attack dissolving into a disorganized withdrawal. When they docked back on the Eternal Light *, Captain Moran himself met them in the bay. The Verith officer looked at the humans, his expression unreadable. "It seems," he said finally, "that we have something to learn about the effectiveness of alternative weapons technologies." Reed allowed himself a small smile. "We'd be happy to provide a more detailed demonstration, Captain." The human embassy on the Council homeworld had transformed over the past 3 weeks. What had once been a quiet diplomatic outpost now buzzed with activity as military personnel, scientists, and engineers from a dozen species moved through its halls. Dr. Thomas Wells stood at the center of the main laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays showing void-born biological samples and weapon schematics. Around him, Council scientists who had once dismissed human technology now watched attentively. "The key is understanding that the Voidborn evolved in a region of space with unusual radiation patterns," Wells explained, manipulating a 3D model. "Their biological shields developed to absorb energy as a survival mechanism, but physical penetration, that's still fatal to them." A Verith weapons engineer named Krell examined a disassembled human rifle on the table before him. His scaled fingers moved carefully over the components. "Such simple mechanisms," he remarked, though his tone lacked its former condescension. "Yet effective against an enemy our advanced systems cannot harm." "Sometimes the old ways work best," Wells replied with a smile. "We're modifying these to work better in space combat. Tungsten carbide rounds, recoil compensation, improved targeting." On the other side of the embassy, Commander Reed sat in a conference room with military leaders from 5 Council species, including Tarn of the Verith. The atmosphere was tense but respectful. "Your strike teams have proven effective for small engagements," Tarn acknowledged, "but the Voidborn are massing larger fleets. We need to scale up." Reed nodded and projected a new schematic. "That's why we've designed these modifications for Council warships. We can mount Railgun batteries alongside your energy weapons. You maintain your traditional systems while adding our kinetic options." A Nilari admiral studied the designs. "Production has already begun at 3 shipyards. Lissa's scientific division is overseeing quality control." "There's still the matter of tactics," Reed continued. "Council ships are designed for long-range energy combat. Our weapons require different approaches, closer engagement, more maneuverable formations." Tarn's scales shifted in what Reed had learned was thoughtful consideration. "The Verith War College requests human military advisors to assist with tactical revisions." The room fell silent. For the proud Verith to request help was unprecedented. "We would be honored," Reed replied simply. Ambassador Miller walked with Elder Vox through the Council garden, a carefully maintained ecosystem featuring plants from hundreds of worlds. Since the success at Talos Prime, These informal discussions had become regular occurrences. "Your people continue to surprise us," Elder Vox admitted. "The Council has operated on the assumption that technological advancement follows a linear path. Energy weapons naturally replaced projectiles, just as our ancestors once replaced blades with energy beams. Human history isn't linear," Miller replied. "We tend to build upon old ideas rather than abandoning them completely. Sometimes we find new uses for old technologies." "A valuable perspective," Elder Vox conceded. "The Probationary Status Committee meets tomorrow. I believe they will vote to upgrade Earth's membership classification." Miller stopped beside a small tree that had been planted with soil from Earth and the colony restrictions. "Those too will be reconsidered. Your contribution to the Voidborn defense justifies greater latitude." As they continued walking, Miller's communication device chimed with an urgent message from Dr. Wells. "Breakthrough. Come immediately." Miller arrived at the laboratory to find Reed, Wells, and Lissa gathered around a strange apparatus. Inside a containment field floated what appeared to be a piece of voidborn tissue connected to various instruments. "We've been studying their communication systems," Wells explained excitedly. "The voidborn don't just have biological shields. They're a hive consciousness. Each ship is part of a larger entity." Lissa's translucent skin pulsed with excitement. "We discovered they communicate using quantum entanglement within their tissues. When one is injured, all feel it. Which explains why they retreated so quickly after we damaged a few ships," Reed added. "It wasn't just tactical withdrawal. It was pain response." Wells adjusted the apparatus. "We believe we can use this knowledge to target their command nodes specifically. One precise strike could disrupt an entire fleet." Miller looked around at the collaborative team, humans and aliens working together, combining different scientific approaches to solve a problem neither could address alone. 2 months ago, they laughed at our weapons, he mused. Now those same weapons might save the galaxy. "Not just the weapons," Lissa corrected gently. "The different perspective they represent. Perhaps that is humanity's true contribution to the Council." The Council homeworld's twin suns cast long shadows across the massive fleet gathered in orbit. Ships from every Council species formed a defensive perimeter, their hulls gleaming with new modifications. Dark, angular railgun turrets contrasting with the sleek energy weapon arrays. At the fleet's center, the human cruiser Defiance stood ready for its first major engagement. Though smaller than the Council flagships, its advanced railgun systems and hybrid technology made it a key part of the defensive strategy. On the bridge, Commander Reed reviewed the tactical display with Ambassador Miller and Captain Moran of the Verith. "Long-range sensors have confirmed it," Moran reported, his scaled face grim. "The largest void-born fleet ever detected. They're not just sending raiders this time. This is their main force." Miller studied the approaching enemy signatures. "They must have realized we found their weakness. Which makes this our one chance to end the threat," Reed added. "Dr. Wells' targeting data has been distributed to all ships. Everyone knows their objectives." Throughout the fleet, human advisors worked alongside alien crews, instructing them on the use of the newly installed kinetic weapons. The Council races had centuries of experience with energy weapons, but were still novices with projectiles. The success of the defense would depend on this hastily formed partnership. "Incoming transmission from Elder Vox," announced the communications officer. The Elder's image appeared on the main screen. Behind him, the other 4 elders stood in the ancient council chamber. "Defenders of the homeworld," Elder Vox began, his metallic scales catching the light. "Today we face an unprecedented threat. For the first time in Council history, all member species fight as one, employing diverse technologies and tactics." He paused, looking directly at the human representatives. "We have learned that true advancement comes not from abandoning the past, but from combining wisdom across cultures and time. May your aim be true." As the transmission ended, the first Voidborn ships appeared at the edge of the system. Massive, pulsating organic forms bristling with energy weapons. All ships, battle stations, Moran ordered, form defensive pattern Omega. The Council fleet arranged itself according to the new tactical doctrine developed by Reed and the War College. Energy weapon ships creating a perimeter to channel the Voidborn toward the waiting kinetic weapon vessels. "They're accelerating," reported a sensor officer, entering weapon range in 30 seconds. Reed took his position at the tactical station. "Remember, target their communication nodes. Disrupt the hive mind." The Voidborn struck with devastating force. Purple energy beams lanced out, striking Council shields. The defenders responded with their own energy weapons, not to damage the enemy, but to occupy their defensive capabilities, while the kinetic strike teams moved into position. Defiance to all strike groups, Reed called. "Execute pattern strike Delta." Smaller vessels broke from the main fleet, racing toward the Voidborn flagships. Among them were human shuttles carrying elite teams trained in boarding actions, a concept the Council had never considered until now. On the main view screen, Reed watched as the Defiance main railguns fired their first volley. Massive projectiles accelerated to phenomenal speeds, crossing space in seconds before tearing through a Voidborn vessel's hull. The creature ship convulsed, dark fluid leaking into space. "Direct hit," called the weapons officer, target showing signs of severe damage. Throughout the fleet, similar reports came in as ship after ship fired their new weapons. The Voidborn, encountering massed kinetic weapons for the first time, seemed confused. Their formations broke apart as individual ships tried to avoid the deadly projectiles. "Strike teams have reached their targets," reported the communications officer. "Boarding in progress." Led by Lieutenant Parker, human and alien soldiers attached to the wounded Voidborn ships. Using specially designed cutting tools, they breached the hulls and planted targeted explosives on the communication nodes Dr. Wells had identified. "All teams," Parker's voice came through the comm. "Charges set. Returning to shuttles." As the strike teams withdrew, the planted charges detonated. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Voidborn fleet's coordinated movements collapsed into chaos. Ships collided with each other or fired at random targets, their hive mind shattered. "Press the advantage," ordered Captain Moran. "All ships, target the disoriented vessels." The combined Council fleet surged forward, railguns and mass drivers tearing through the confused Voidborn. What had begun as a desperate defense turned into a decisive victory, as ship after ship fell to weapons they had no defense against. Hours later, as the last Voidborn retreated from the system, Elder Vox stood before the full Council. Ambassador Miller and Commander Reed represented Earth at his side. "Today marks a new era for the Galactic Council," Elder Vox announced. "In recognition of humanity's crucial contribution to our survival, Earth is granted full membership status, with all attendant rights and privileges." Miller stepped forward to accept the formal charter as applause filled the chamber. The same chamber where humans had once been mocked for their primitive weapons. "The greatest weapon humanity brought us was not their guns," Elder Vox continued, "but their perspective, their reminder that progress is not abandoning the past, but building upon it. Together, we are stronger than we could ever be apart." As cheers echoed through the chamber, Reed caught Miller's eye. No one was laughing at human guns anymore.